I'm about to show you a simple PHT exercise you can do at home or when traveling without using heavy weights. It may sound like I'm going against my own advice, because if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I highly recommend weighted prone hamstring curls, weighted step-ups, and my number one must, deadlifts. Why? Because the cornerstone of any tendon rehab is slow, heavy, progressive load. I'll get to this home exercise contradiction shortly, but it is important to mention that I do highly encourage everyone, when possible, to get access to a gym or a similar home setup for their rehab. But I also understand that it's not a realistic option all the time. If you fit into this camp, my next best recommendation is to pick up secondhand adjustable dumbbells for your deadlifts and step-ups at home. I do also suggest a resistance band for hamstring curls, but it's not my favorite, because the load on the tendon changes throughout the entire movement, starting off light and finishing hard as more tension is put on the band. But the opposite happens with ankle weights, starting off with high tension and finishing really easy because gravity is now pulling straight down, making it easier to move. But a curl with weights has consistent load all the way through, which better suits tendon healing. But if a gym and home weights still aren't for you, especially if you're traveling a lot without access to weights, my next recommendation is a special modification of the Nordic drop that is very rarely mentioned. Before I discuss this special modification, a traditional Nordic drop, if you haven't heard of it, involves securing your ankles under a piece of furniture. Clients often find it difficult and uncomfortable finding the right piece of furniture to do this, so my solution is to purchase one of these, a Nordic door strap, which slides under the door, locks your ankles in place, and is perfect to take with you when traveling. Then the traditional Nordic drop requires slowly lowering yourself down until you can't control that descent anymore and catching yourself with your hands before crawling back up and repeating. This is a nice exercise to strengthen the hamstring muscle belly, but it is too advanced for a lot of my PHT clients. To make it easier, you can reduce the range with a box or assist that descent with a Swiss ball. To better mimic the hamstring curl, you can also incorporate a concentric curl into that movement rather than just focusing on the eccentric lowering phase. Aim for 4 sets of 6 with any of these modifications so that it is challenging yet doesn't aggravate symptoms. Typically, less than a 4 out of 10 during the exercise is considered okay, provided there are no irritation of your symptoms above typical by the next morning. It's up to you to experiment and find where this sweet spot is. By the way, if you lack direction with your current rehab program, click on my questionnaire in the description and I'll point you to the most appropriate resources to accelerate your rehab. But all of the exercises I have mentioned so far aren't even my favorites. Because like I said at the start, my number one must is a deadlift. Because unlike all these other exercises, the hinging action of the deadlift loads up the upper hamstring in a way that, when done correctly, eventually allows you to tolerate more sitting, driving, uphill running, and bending over. So the hinging component of an exercise is extremely important, which brings me to this special modification that perfectly matches the stimulus of a deadlift. I call them Nordic hip dips. And while they do seem simple at first, there are a few trick movements that you may not realize you're doing, which completely removes all the benefit. So listen closely. Put your hands on your hips and dip forward. Importantly, keep your thighs completely vertical, because any backward movement of your hips takes all the load out of the hamstrings. Start with 3 sets of 5 at 1/4 or half range of movement, depending on your symptoms, your level of strength, and skill level. Once again, it's up to you to experiment and find this sweet spot. Eventually, you'll progress to full range, which is 90 degrees bend. After that, you can progress further by holding onto heavy household objects close to your chest. But a word of warning. As important as these hinge movements are, they can be dangerous. And I've seen a lot of flare-ups because either the starting point or the progressions that you go through expose the tendon to higher loads than it can tolerate, leading to a flare-up. So if you have had flare-ups from deadlifts before, or if you want to make sure you've got all the right checks and balances in place, then you need to watch this video, where I'll walk you through specific safeguards that you can apply to your deadlifts and Nordic drops to mitigate your risk of a flare-up.